I think in the study hack space, caffeine is often seen as a great focus booster and everyone should be taking it. It makes sense because those spaces generally gather people looking for something extra, and supplements are definitely extra. But because people basically only post accounts of caffeine making a positive impact, and it is assumed that caffeine just is a focus booster, the negatives are often getting lost. And people who have no business taking it are taking it. And this is not fear mongering. I'm not saying that caffeine is bad for you, but people are often just not realistic and reasonable about this. And that leads people to immediately abandoning the idea that not taking any caffeine at all could potentially be better for them. Now, if you do decide to use caffeine, I have a special tip at the end of this video that I find helps me utilize it more effectively, but that's for later. Personally, when I need to focus, I don't use caffeine. If I don't have a task for that day that requires maximum focus, I'll take caffeine. Maybe, maybe not. But to maximize focus, unless it's something really fun like lifting or video games. So for example, if I'm reading, not even necessarily a textbook, or I'm attending a lecture or seminar or training, I know that caffeine is going to be a detriment. And at this point, that's not even a question. I know 100% that it's going to make me focus worse. So that's a negative account for you to consider. What is happening in my head is that in the middle of studying, I get an idea, for example, for a video, and of course, exploring that idea is more compelling than studying. If I'm on caffeine, that contrast gets bumped up so much that there is no way I can choose studying. Even if I try, my mind just automatically goes back to the thought. So if you're experiencing something similar, definitely be cautious. I also see caffeine not as much as a straight nootropic, but rather more of a psychoactive substance. So it's not as much that it helps me focus, it more makes me excitable. And it has this feedback loop effect. Many substances work fairly strongly on me, I feel, but caffeine is special. It almost doesn't matter whether I take 200 mg or 20, because all that needs to happen is that my heart rate rises, I feel more activated, and that gets me hyped up, which in turn raises my heart rate and all that other stuff, and that gets me hyped further still. But that's not even the most important reason why, by default, I would say you shouldn't use caffeine if your life requires a lot of focus. And here I'm actually making a statement. Unless there are good reasons for you to use caffeine, you know that it makes you focus better, you should stay off. The thing about caffeine is that once it's a factor, it's a factor. You make it a factor whether you are aroused or not. So at any moment, you're asking yourself whether you're not aroused enough and need more caffeine, or you're too aroused and need to calm down, dude. So you're never in a perfect state. And the thing is, people talk about when does an explanation become an excuse. But the truth is that technically there is no distinction between the two. It's just psychologically which one are you more okay with. If you're late to work because you were stuck in traffic for an hour, That was fairly probable to have happened over 10 years or something. You could have technically left home an hour earlier every day to reduce that margin of error, but you've decided that's not worth it. And that's written into the conversation. When your boss says, we really need you to be on time every day because X, he's not going to add, unless there's a meteor that crashes into the road, in which case I'm not going to reprimand you for that. You know that you have to make a decision based on your best judgment. How much are you willing to give for what level of assurance? And when your boss does reprimand you for that, you technically shouldn't say, I couldn't have predicted that. You should say, I took the measures that I felt were reasonable to avoid that, but the margin of error is still a possibility, and it happened. Of course, what you say to your boss is also rhetorics, but technically that is what's happening. But aside from that philosophical tangent, I believe adding the caffeine factor just complicates things for no reason. You could technically make up a rule on caffeine, like you drink just a cup of coffee in the morning and that's it. But at this point, you're kinda not talking about people who want to use it as a nootropic, who want to maximize its benefits. And you're dealing with the caffeine crash, even if it's minor and even if it's a constant every day. I just don't think it's reasonable to expect yourself to be so strict. If it's an option, you are going to take it. If that's not you, great. If it is you, don't try to force some logical solution. Just do something else. In this case, don't use caffeine. And with regards to the positive effects of caffeine and its supposed lack of negatives, people sometimes make up claims that are just so outrageous, like caffeine helps me sleep. Sure, if you plug the same variable into a different formula, you can get vastly different results, but you're not some alien with a reverse brain. Maybe it puts you in a calm mood, but its mechanism of action is literally blocking the compound that makes you sleepy. Maybe you just had too much caffeine yesterday, so you didn't sleep much, and today this lack of sleep combined with a calm mood puts you to sleep. But that's about it. You shouldn't drink caffeine to fall asleep. It's an isolated anomaly and should be treated as such. And the reason why people make such claims is simple. People just love their coffee. Some love the taste, some love more how it makes them feel. Most probably actually love the whole experience collectively. So they assign all these positive things to it, when in reality those claims might be false and they just like it. It's like listening to music while studying. There's some speculation that it might help, but really it's mostly just people looking really hard to find crumbs of evidence because they just like listening to music. But don't see it as reason enough to keep doing so, so they're digging for an actually valid reason when they could just be doing what they like because they like it. When I talk about my methods for learning, sure, I have some theories about the mechanism that might make them effective, but many of them are probably just fun challenges that keep me more engaged, and ultimately it produces the desired outcome. So just don't take me too seriously. Just get inspired, find what works for you. I'm not here to find the ultimate truth. I'm here to possibly produce results. Now, so far that was all against using caffeine or neutral, but I also have used caffeine a lot. I've experimented with it a lot, and there are special situations when I would in fact use caffeine for focus, and there is a particular technique that I use. My advice on using caffeine when studying or doing work that requires focus is the quantum of solace quote. When the adrenaline kicks in, you should compensate. Let the caffeine do its thing passively and just try to remain as calm as possible to not let it excite you in a way that is distracting. You only want the alertness, you don't want the excitement. That's all. Please remember to lick, cement and subterfuge.